to another episode of In Case You Want to Take Notes, the podcast for performers by performers, where we open the book on show business. I'm Kristen.
I'm Britt.
And today we are recording on Wicked Part 2 release day.
We are.
It's very exciting. It's very fitting, I think. Do you want to know why, Britt?
Why?
She doesn't know. No. I think this is the episode that's going to change us for good. And that's because it's the episode that everyone has asked for.
Everybody has been asking.
Yeah.
Yes, this is our most requested episode thus far.
Yeah.
So we put out a call to you guys to see if any of you knew any accountants that specifically catered to us creatives.
Yeah, it's a tricky biz.
And one of you came through. You were on their waiting list, and you recommended Matt from Creative Crunches. And we had a phone call, and we just knew that he was like perfect to talk to today. So welcome, Matt.
Lovely to be here. Thank you very much. No pressure.
No pressure.
No pressure. You are just the most asked for person.
Yes.
Which actually
It's a good thing.
is a great thing.
It's a great
considering I think this might be the hardest thing for us as creatives to navigate.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for giving your time today, because look, we've just gone through another tax year. Our tax returns have just been due if we do it ourselves. It's time. It's time we talk about the hard stuff.
That's fine. As I always say to people that want to listen at all on this sort of stuff, though, it's always time.
It's always time.
It's always time. Every day of the year is a day for tax.
It is for you particularly.
Well, it is for me. I do have no choice.
So in terms of, I guess, let's start at the beginning. How did you get into accounting for the creative industry?
Yeah, so I got into it. My dad started this business back in the early 80s, and he didn't set out to be an accountant in the creative space, but he fell into it, a little bit by accident, going to an AGM. Well, he thought he was going to a different AGM, but he went to an AGM for a place back then called Queensland Cinematheque, and it was all for film and telly technicians. And he ended up taking the treasurer position. He was there to take a treasurer position, but he ended up taking the treasurer position for a different organisation. And that just put him into the sphere of creatives. And then he just kind of really loved dealing with them, through all the different sort of permutations, film and TV, visual performers, the whole lot. And word spread quickly. And before he knew it, he was really carving out a little bit of a specialisation in that area. And he continued to do that. I, grew up, and I used to play drums for many years. And when it got to a point of leaving school and wanting to figure out what I was going to do, all I really wanted to do was play drums at that point. Yeah. But I'd actually taken accounting subjects through school and did well at them. Probably no surprise if it's sort of in a family gene, I guess. And yeah, one thing led to another, where he gave me good advice back then to just say, well, if you want to be just a player, which is what I didn't really want to teach. I didn't necessarily want to do producing or anything. I just wanted to be on stage and play that instrument, right? So he's like, well, the best thing you can do is just get out and hustle and get gigs and play and practice. You probably don't need formal study for that, but it's always good to have something, and you're good at this, so you should enroll and do business as a qualification, and the worst case scenario is it will end up being a fallback for you potentially, because the industry you're about to get into is really, really bloody hard. Yes. And you need to be really, really serious if you're going to do it, because if I've learned one thing about dealing with all of these clients, they've got serious commitment, Matt. They do this and sacrifice everything else in their life. So you've got to sort of, just that was his advice. So I did that, and then through the course at uni, I did well at it. I liked it. It came naturally to me, but I loved playing as well. So I did both of those things through those university years, and just burnt the candle at both ends, just sort of working full time and playing Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, doing cover work, original bands, like the whole lot. And I loved it both, but it was time consuming to do both. And eventually, I guess the career in accounting kept notching up, you know, through senior ranks and demanding more of my time. And as a professional drummer, I found out very quickly that writing songs is a very handy skill to have, which I couldn't do. So, you know, I wasn't really going to end up being on the receiving end of royalty income streams. And I was at the mercy of just the band holding together, you know, and unless I was going to be a complete freelancer. So that became harder and harder. And anyway, the backup plan ended up being where I landed. But a great backup plan, because really if I was doing this job, I wouldn't really want to do it working in any other industry. Like, I still feel like I'm connected to the creatives, you know. There's just, I mean, I'm living totally vicariously through them. But it is the best part of the job. Just, yeah, I still get to kind of have a bit of exposure to those two worlds, the sort of right and left side of the brain, as they say.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. And also, in an industry that we don't quite understand, to go to someone who understands maybe our lifestyle a little bit more, also I think it's a great thing when it comes
Hugely
to
helpful.
Yeah, having to explain why your accounts look the way that they do.
If there's one thing, the biggest thing that new clients coming into us, if they've never been to a specialist before, the reason they're seeking one out is because they come to us saying, I just get the feeling my accountant doesn't understand a thing about what I do. You know, I talk to them and I try to explain it, but there's like a blank expression, or I think they can just feel that the answers coming back are so disconnected. You can tell when someone understands what you're talking about. You know this, and I think if the accountants are sort of not really interested in the arts, well, you know, if they've never stepped foot in a gallery or they've never gone to a show and that's not what rows their boat, they're not sort of connected or interested in it. Yeah, how are they going to be able to sort of talk or talk in that language or really understand the client? That they tend to just talk at the client through the concepts of tax and bookkeeping and numbers and all that sort of stuff, but it's just not what gets through, you know. So that's definitely the biggest thing that we have hearing from, you know, clients that haven't had the specialist.
I had an accountant when I was like in my 20s, and I brought in like 24 PAYG slips, and they just looked at me and they're like, I don't understand how you have this many. And I was like, because I needed one for every single job. Why did you have so many jobs? And I was like, because they're all different acting jobs.
Yes.
That's a great example. We've seen that, you know, but for us, because we deal with this all the time, that's not an unknown.
For you.
You know, we know that. We know that our clients go on different productions and working at not the level, not always on the level for the techs, but sometimes the level of those businesses as well. We understand what it's like to be advising those employers where they're having to engage these people. It's like you need to put them on payroll, or if they are allowed to contract with them, making sure that they're validly engaging contracting and doing the super, you know. So we're just used to that landscape because that's what we're just consumed with all the time with the industry. But you know, it works the other way, right? Because if I've got a client coming to me that says, hey, I need accounting support and I'm a property developer, I just would not take that person on as a client because I don't know what I don't know, but I know enough to know I'm not a specialist on property and construction. So, and we've had clients in the past where they've sort of just deviated from one industry into another and their business sort of morphs and they get into something different through their life. And there'll be a point where you just have to professionally bow out and say, your interests are best served by someone who actually specialises in this particular industry. Because the rules are just getting so complex now that I think the firms who aren't finding a specialisation, it's getting really difficult for them to be across everything, you know, and still be able to control all that risk from an advisory point of view.
I think that's the thing, is that we were talking off air before. This is an ever-changing system, right? Things are coming in. There are even just we've seen in the last 12 months just to do with HEX, like interest rates, not interest rate, like that refund coming back. There's a new creative tax offset coming in next year. Like, everything is constantly changing, and so I really admire people that say, actually, I'm not the right person for you. I can see that you need X, Y, and Z, or hey, I actually am really good at this. Come and see me to do this.
Yeah, that's what you want to do, and that's our advice to the whole artistic community. If you can get in front of a specialist in that field, we just personally think it's the way to go. And I think the biggest piece of positive feedback that we do get from clients when they have shifted from that previous environment, it's really just, if I explain a concept to someone new, I've lost count of the number of times where I've heard back, I think my previous accountant tried to actually tell me this stuff, but there's something like it's ringing bells that they've heard it before, but just not in any sort of language that they've been able to understand. So it's just about being able to cut through, I think.
Amazing.
And I guess that to some extent they're trusting us to actually do the technical job, but that's not what actually drives the relationship. The relationship is more about just being able to. I'm a big believer in trying to educate as much as I can. I mean, I've got clients, you can tell in a meeting when the eyes will glaze over. It's just like, okay, I've lost them now. Talk about something else. So long as I know what I'm doing, that's fine. But I just find that that's what they actually latch onto, and that's what makes them feel comfortable and want to come back. Just that they feel that they're not being judged and they're learning something, so that it demystifies the landscape for them. Because I think that's what they're most terrified about. They don't know what they don't know either. And I think it's very unique in the arts and the creative space, where I've just met so many people now over my lifetime that they're just not motivated by these things at all. It's the creative aims, it's who they're working with, it's the project that they're on, it's who wrote the script or the film, or it's it's what's happening in the lighting department and wardrobe and everything. And so you can just you can understand that when they turn their mind to this stuff and have to sit down and talk to someone about the most boring aspect of their professional life, you've got to try to cut through somehow to make it interesting, because it is important stuff. If they can get their heads around it and be more relaxed with it through that knowledge, it's a good thing.
I also think we start our career, a lot of us, not everyone, start our career not being paid for the stuff that we do. So the money factor being an afterthought kind of is in more facets than just the tax. It's like, I should actually be being paid for this thing that I love to do and want to do as a job. So I think that's why you are the perfect guest for today, because education and demystifying the business is something that we are really passionate about as well. And so I guess let's start at the basics.
Sure. I know where to start with that too. If I can lead into that, is one of the things I commonly say if I'm talking to groups at that level is that everyone tends to think about this stuff at tax time. And by the time you're getting to 30th of June each financial year, the year's gone. So the idea of having to trawl back through a year of your life in numbers that you're not really geared towards anyway, trying to search for documentation that you probably never kept, and it's awful. And if you go through that as an exercise and you come out the other end of it, it's an ordeal, and that doesn't really prime you to want to spend any time on it for the upcoming financial year. It's horrid, and it just it's learned behaviour that it's like tax is really as awful as I think it is. And I always say to clients and prospects, as weird as this sounds, the best thing you can do is start training yourself to think about this stuff every day of the year. Because, I mean, it's easy for me to say this because I am an accountant and I'm naturally geared towards doing this stuff. So I look after all the books of my own business. And I love actually doing that because it's my little moment every day where I just get this little piece of solace to go and just do the bookkeeping and the accounting and the thing that I trained for years and years and years to learn. So I like it, but the thing that even I recognise after all these years of doing it every single day is, number one, I'm at peace with my OCD, but the other thing that comes from it is that it's never hard, because every little morning that you get up and you just say to yourself, before the whole day gets underway, I'm just going to do yesterday's bookkeeping, I'm going to code off my transactions. If you've got that into a regimented sort of habit, there's a limit to how many possible transactions any business could have in a day, and for everyone starting out, so seriously, when you're starting out, there'll be days where there was nothing yesterday, that. So that's really just a day that you can tick off, well, that took no time. Yeah. And then you just concentrate on the next day. But if you can build those habits and you're doing it every single day, it just doesn't take that long. And if you build habits around just collecting like the records when you're doing it, then the records are always there the next day when you go to put them all into neat little piles and file them away, because you've done the collecting the day before. And you're doing the collecting the day before because you've trained your brain to just think about it in the here and now. And if you train yourself to do that through habit, it's not something, you don't really even think about it and after a while. They say 3 months is like the habit forming time frame. Yeah. And I think that is quite true. So if you do that, even though you can get to the end of an entire year and say to yourself, I've spent hours doing this job, but it won't feel like you've committed all of those hours. It doesn't feel every day like it's tedious and difficult because the paperwork's there and the time is not much. And so everything that comes from it, though, is you've got all the records you need, there are no surprises, you've got a system in place, it becomes less and less something that you're even consciously thinking of. All the information starts to get put into, and we've got software these days that help that.
I'm just so overwhelmed by the topic.
We're off to a good start. So it's a little bit, there's a bit of irony there that the thing that is your best tip is actually spend more time on this daily, and you will find that it becomes so much easier and less tedious, which means it's not reinforced behaviour that the whole thing is horrible. It's actually easy, and now I think, having been in it for 26 years or so now, I've seen a lot of changes. It was still pretty manual when I started. I'm that old, right? So computers were really just coming into the workplace in their infancy, like a basic tax kind of program, but letters were still being typed out on typewriters and stuff, like it's scary to think that, but that's what was happening, right? So we would have clients coming in with diaries just stuffed full of receipts, or bags, sometimes just boxes of stuff. When I started working for Dad, that was the tedious stuff that he would give to me so that his other staff didn't have to do it anymore. And I will never forget just like taking like a whole box. I'm talking like one of those sort of grace removal type boxes that was just full of loose receipts. Now, kudos to the client for at least having the foresight, to go every day and go, that might be something the accountant wants to look at. But I would spend like a day going through this and just looking at each receipt going, what is this? And there'd be things like, I'll never forget seeing instructions for a pram. So it's like,
And they've just popped in the same box.
Yeah, just, okay, instructions for a pram. Oh, congratulations if that's a newborn child, you know, but not deductible. So that's on the not relevant pile. But you would trawl through all of those receipts. Like, it's not like that anymore. There are so many more kind of tools at our disposal now to try to make all of this collection and putting it into software programs that are designed to help us. That all of that stuff is just so much better now. It's stuff that you've got to learn, but it's there to help you. So
a little bit of something every day, which is what I've been saying about this podcast. Just an hour every day.
Yep.
Just focus time. So amazing. That's great. I'm like, okay, so I've filtered my emails into like the tax year that I need it to be in my hard drive, but that's as far as it goes. So I need to go a little bit further, right?
I find, and yes, a little bit further. I know the system that I employ, and that's maybe not everyone's system. It's all digital now, so a lot of people are definitely moving along the lines of being able to, use apps on their phone to take a scan of receipts as they're on the road, that sort of thing.
I love, because some of those receipt papers just fade off.
They do. I'm still, I guess, when it's not a major surprise to hear that someone who's come from sorting out boxes of people's lives, that I'm still quite a tactile type of person, right? But I still run, I guess, a system in my office where wherever I'm at, I'm collecting that paperwork. So I still like to be able to grab the physical sort of receipts and just have them at my desk, so that when I'm coming into the next day and coding everything and sending it somewhere, I've just got that paperwork and it's all filed in date order. So I'm still a bit old school because, I do it that way, but it's still one of those things where I sleep at night, because if the HO ever come and audit my business and audit it 4 years from now, I know that I've just got 4 quarterly lever arch folders with everything in full date order. And, I know hand on heart that if they want to go through any of those sort of transactions, I can just say, here's the data file, go through it, pick out anything you like. It'll be in these folders. And I could probably count on one hand the number of receipts that have been missed in 6 years of doing that, because it's just so ingrained to just keep the receipt. Unless I've got it, then it's not going to get coded, sort of thing. So even in the cases where I've not got an official receipt, I've gone and put down data into a little piece of paper and just said, this is the reason why I didn't collect it, or I just missed it, or I couldn't get one, or whatever it is. But it's only happened on 5 occasions, sort of thing. Again, OCD is also a friend. So, but a lot of people these days are sort of taking those same principles, but really just doing it through more of the technology to be able to scan the receipt and have that coming into an accounting program. But at the heart of it, it's still a discipline about collecting the information when it's happening and coming in regularly to kind of code that into a relevant place. Because it's one thing to keep documentation as proof. That's what you need in the case of an audit. But ultimately, and that's fine if an audit's going to happen. They're pretty rare though, but when they happen, they are really, really brutal. They go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. So it's important in that event, but much more important every sort of day through your working year is being able to pull up information about how your business is actually doing. Where am I spending money? How much money am I making? What if I've got a product line? What is that product line actually profitable for me or not? All of those proper questions need answers, and the answers can only really come if you're getting that information into some sort of system. So you're wanting to really categorize expense types and have them all pooled. So what's my printing and stationery cost each year? What am I spending on marketing or social media management? What am I spending on lawyers? What am I spending on bean counters? It could be anything. So it's about trying to just codify everything. And everyone's got a different sort of system as to everyone's got a different business as to what's going to be the most normal sort of expenses. What is one person's expense is not necessarily another person's expense. So businesses can be different. So that landscape's going to look different, but at the heart of it is still just try to build a system for yourself where this raw data is being coded into some sort of accounting system, whether it's just a system of Excel cash books or Xero or MYOB or, there's a whole myriad of software on the marketplace now, some of it free, some of it for cost, some of it better than others, but it's all designed to just try to help you to just do a coding task, which is telling the software, this is postage, this is printing and stationery, this is rent, this is computers, and then being able to just ask the software to go, give me a report on my profit and loss, give me a report on where my bank balance is at, and then just start to get used to the sort of reporting that these systems can give you, and having conversations with people like me and your peers, and just getting more familiar with all of it so that it just becomes less and less foreign.
Scary.
If there's one thing that scares, I think the biggest fear with clients, from my take on it after all this time, is it's not even that they necessarily hate paying tax. None of us want to pay any more tax than we need to, but I've got clients who have paid some pretty massive tax bills, but they don't care because they know it's coming.
Yes.
And they also take the attitude to say, well, if the tax bill is here and we've minimised it as much as possible and it's still that large, I guess that means I'm doing well. So yeah, it does. And it's a good, paying tax is, it's kind of like a good news story. But the thing that scares people about it is they're often getting hit with the tax bills when they don't know they're coming. Yeah. And that is about having the clarity through all the record keeping. And that's why I bang on about this stuff so much. It's like, I know you don't want to be bookkeepers and you don't want to be specialists in this. That's what I'm sort of here for. But the more you can learn at least a certain level of competence in this area to demystify it. And so these programs are giving you the information you need. The conversations that you'll start having with the accountant will be just on a different level. You'll understand so much more. It means that the accountant can sort of stop with the jargon so much. The conversations are easier, and you get more on the front foot with everything, because every day you're sort of going in and coding it and being able to report on where your business is at right here, right now. So if you're doing well, you're going to see it. And that prompts the conversation to say to the accountant, have I got tax looming? And the answer probably is yes, you do. So let's now have a conversation about budgeting and being able to do everything you can in a crazy roller coaster freelance world to sort of put this money aside and be disciplined, probably from a cash flow point of view, so that when this tax hits you, the money's there. Yeah. Because if it's there, you just pay it and you're moving forward. It's not, I've got $2,000 as a tax bill that I didn't know was coming. Where on earth is that going to come from?
Yes.
Even I can recognise that is going to be, that's going to scare people, that's going to make them more apprehensive. So the answer to it is just knowing that it's coming. But yes, the ugly side of that is you've got to sort of be a pseudo expert bookkeeper.
And I like
Spoiler alert.
I think it's a mind switch for them as well. Going from something like working at McDonald's, working at a bar, where they pay the tax before you get your pay, to switching your brain to becoming, you are a business. You as a performer, you're getting paid for this. You have to think about yourself as a business. So that's not getting paid for you. You need to start getting proactive about thinking about tax and your costs and everything. You are a business. You're not just yourself anymore. And I think that's the biggest mindset change for them, is that they have to...
And it gets messy when you have a day job too, when you're like,
yes,
half my income does have tax paid automatically out of it because I get a paycheck from my day job that is not in the creative industry.
Yes.
And now I have half my income from invoicing, different employers, all of this stuff, I definitely got better at money during COVID than I usually do. And now it's a matter of, okay, well, I'm going to take this amount of tax out of that paid invoice. I'm going to put it in a separate account so that when it comes tax time, I know it's already there. I don't have to think about it. That has changed my life. And I know it's so simple.
Yeah, I mean, it might seem so simple, but again, that's the sort of discipline that we're talking about here. And you've sort of hit it on the head there too, because when people do move from that employment, the only thing they're really used to receiving is the net pay.
Yes.
That's what they're used to seeing. So when an employer is taking care of the rest of it for them, it just doesn't click in people's minds that actually what they're actually earning more than that. It's just that the tax is being taken out on their behalf, but they're never forced to do any of the discipline around it. And so when they switch to being in that freelance world, now they're receiving all of the gross amount of that income, but they're still thinking that, okay, well, they're used, it's
That's my net.
That's the thing, because what they relate to is just the physical receipt of the money. And when the money hits their bank account and they get paid for the invoice, they're used to being able to just use that money as their disposable income for their life. I know it seems trivial, but it really is a massive thing for them to switch their thinking to like all of these obligations. It's a real crash course in being your own employer.
Yeah.
And further along the chain, if you're working in these industries to the point where you start running a business, then you will actually become an employer where the discipline and responsibility is heightened again, because you're not just responsible for yourself anymore, you're responsible for actually doing all the deduction of the tax for your employees and making sure the super is there, making sure the money is there, and that you know where the tax is coming in your own business, because you're feeding multiple mouths now, not just your own. So, but yeah, that's just something, I guess I don't know if there's any sort of tips for that. The main thing that we just try to say to clients is it all stems back to trying to build these systems so that you've got the clarity so you know what's coming. That's your friend. But in that roller coaster freelance world, the hardest thing is actually planning for it. Very easy when you're just doing a day job and it's regular hours and it's regular income and therefore it's regular tax withholdings, and you can budget so much more easily when you just know that there's regular amounts coming in. That is really, really more difficult when it's just random invoices and costs are coming out. Down the line, it might be that you've got to take account of GST effects in all of these sorts of things as well. Trying to plan for that is hard. And without trying to sound flippant about this, what we say to clients is just try to start with putting aside some sort of percentage from the invoice. So if you've done work and the invoice has been $1,000, just know in the back of your mind that when that $1,000 hits your bank account, it's not all yours. There is going to be tax, and hiving some of it aside is just a good habit to get into. Whether that's putting it into a separate kind of bank account. Many clients will use that strategy where it's like, right, I'm going to have my business bank account. That's where everything gets funneled and that's where everything's going to get paid from. And that's good. I recommend doing that too, because it can be a great separator from your business life, from your personal life, which is already intertwined, right? Because that's a struggle for creatives too, right? They're doing what they love, and so there's just such a meshing between what they're doing with a professional edge with what they're doing in their life that they just love doing. You know what I mean? So I find that if they've got that separate bank account, it's a good start to try to build the separation in the brain. And then from that point, it's about trying to be disciplined with putting some of the money aside. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be in a separate bank account, but I think a lot of people find it a lot easier if it's just shifted physically and then it's in a different account. And I guess the rule for them to the extent that they can control it is don't touch it until the BAS comes in. Don't touch it until the tax return is filed. You know, you know it's going to be coming at you. It's not if, it's when. Now, the next question that follows is, well, how much? And you know, well, how long is a piece of string? You know, it's like there is no actual amount that's necessarily going to save you. The technicality in all that always boils down to the numbers. Like, well, how is the business actually tracking? Because, you know, if you've gone and earned $1,000 from the business, say in this very simple example, but you've had to go and spend that whole $1,000 on relevant business expenses that you know are going to be deductible, well, from a profitability point of view with that, you haven't made profit yet. It's just income in, but it's matched with expenses out the other side. How much tax is going to be payable on net profit of nothing? Nothing. So to be hiving money aside from that $1,000 invoice in that situation is overkill. So ultimately, how much, you know, a person is putting aside, if you really want to drill into how much and try to get very good at putting the right amount away, the answer to that really is it's in your software, it's in your discipline, it's in being able to produce those reports to let you know how has my business travelled for the last 3 months? Is it running a profit? Is it running a loss? If it is a profit, how much is it? And from there, it's about being able to look at the tax system and sort of see what your exposure is likely to be and try to hive off some of that in expectation. That's the technical answer to it. But for a lot of people, it's like that's all well and good, but it's almost like shooting to that Ferrari level of knowledge, you know, and they're trying to just start somewhere. Where do I start? And I think, well, if you're going to start somewhere, just try to start with getting disciplined in terms of putting something aside. You know, if you've got something put aside at the end, every bit's going to help. And if it ends up that you've done very well at that and done too much, well, it'll be happy days when you find out that good news. You get the
tax return.
I'm like, oh, my tax return's back.
But you've got to start somewhere. But yeah, so for all your listeners who are really starting out and like, where do I start? These would be my big go-tos in terms of just starting. You don't need accounting software straight away. Like if you're just more comfortable setting up a simple kind of spreadsheeting system where you're just tracking your invoices coming in and being paid, and you're tracking your expenses and trying to categorize those things. Excel is an amazing program. It's super cheap. And you can just get, you can get Excel to do some pretty powerful things without needing a really super expert knowledge of Excel. Just a couple of sum formulas will be your friend, and just
dig that brain back to high school.
That's it. That's all you really need to do, and that'll serve you well in the early stages up to a certain point. As I said, I still happily run a manual system of just collecting my receipts and putting them in a lever arch folder. Like there could be other accountants that listen to this and just go, that guy's crazy, but it works for me and I'm fine with it.
I do both. I've got a box that I put all my receipts in, and then I also do it digitally because I'm just so worried about one of them going wrong. I need both for my brain.
Why not? Yeah. Whatever works. Ultimately, whatever works, because as I said, audits don't happen very often. They are rare. There's got to be usually something in a tax return that's pretty way out there for it to be sort of even triggered for them to have a look. But when they do happen, they really just turn around and say, we're auditing this client of yours. We want to see everything that's in this tax return. So the more that's in there, the more you've got to compile. So again, I sleep at night because I know that I just have to hand over a lever arch file.
Yeah.
And tell them not to get it out of order, because I spent a lot of time doing that. You know, keep it in order. Look at whatever you want, but
Care
just
for this.
don't you be taking out my receipts and putting them back in the wrong place. Because honestly, like there have been some, you know, occasions in the past where even I've needed to go and chase down something myself for my own business. And even for me, it's just like, get into the accounting file, do the interrogation, find out where that expense was. That's what I'm looking for. Great. This was the date. Go to the folder, find it. There's my source paperwork. It doesn't take long. Doesn't take long. And then after the sort of 5 years where you don't really need to technically keep it any longer, it's a wonderful feeling to just rip it through the shredder.
I do love a shredder moment. It's fun.
I have a 7-year-old daughter, and that's her favourite job for me, is to be able to shred things that I don't need anymore.
Yep.
So good.
Because why not?
Why not? All right. So in terms of people being their own business, quite often in this industry, when you say logging your expenses, do you mean every expense or just expenses that are relevant to the work that they're doing in the creative industry?
Yeah, and this sort of goes down to, what can I claim? Everyone asks that, what can I claim? And the thing is, it's not really an alphabetical answer, this is in, this is out. It's more, the way the Tax Act is constructed for deductibility of expenses is actually quite simple. It really just says, if there's a nexus between the incurring of an expense and the derivation of income. So it's going to be, unless there's an exclusion, it's going to be tax deductible. So
in layman's terms.
So in layman's terms, that just means if the expense is related to you actually having earned income from, so if you've gone out and you've done a job and you've earned $1,000 for that job, but you've you've had to incur travel maybe to get to that freelance job, or you've had some sort of out-of-pocket cost. There might have been a piece of equipment that you needed to buy to sort of get that job done. Something where you can absolutely connect. It's like, Mr. Tucker, why did you spend money on this? It's like, well, because without it, I wouldn't have been able to complete this particular job. And there's the income. The income is accessible to tax. The expense in incurring that money should also be deductible as well. And the Tax Act just simply kind of says that. If there's an excess, then prima facie, it's going to be deductible. Now that's got to be a very strict connection with actual income being earned. But when it comes to running a business, that is just running a business, like you said earlier, sometimes you'll be out there doing things and not even getting paid, you know. So there's something to be said for running a business and incurring expenses running that business. And it might not be that you're matching a particular expense with an actual invoice of money, but you are able to connect the expense with the actual running of the business.
So for example, I'm a photographer, so I take a lot of headshots for actors. That isn't necessarily connected to that specific job that they're going for. That is something that they need for all of their auditions, for all of their going forth. So that would be something like that.
That's right. Great example. So there's a second limb in this sort of Section 8.1 covers deductions. And in that Section 8.1, there's these two limbs. So we just talked about the first one, but the second one says, if the expense has been necessarily incurred in the running of a business, then it will be deductible as well, unless exclusions apply. So, and when they say necessarily incurred, it's not that the government has a right to really come in and tell you how to run your business. You don't have to prove necessary, but you just need to demonstrate that there is that nexus, there's that connection. Because if you've got two people running businesses and one of them chooses to advertise in, particular publications and spend $5,000 doing so, that might be their business decision, but that doesn't mean the next person is going to choose that same place or that same amount. You might find that they don't feel they've got to advertise their services at all, and they might not have any advertising spend. So one business has got an advertising spend and another one doesn't. But that's not, so on a sort of like on an alphabetical sort of test, is advertising deductible? It's like it's not the way to think about it. It's like, is the expense that you've got right in your hands right now, can you connect it to the running of your business, yes or no? Because if the answer is yes, the way that you feel your business should be run, then prima facie it's going to be deductible, or there's a very good chance it'll be deductible. You should be keeping the documentation. There's always going to be that second pass that an accountant may come over the top of everything after you've done all that hard work and say, well, look, in these little tiny areas, that's not deductible because of this rule, or that's not deductible because of that rule. And over time, you'll get better at understanding, okay, well, I won't channel my attention if I'm entertaining people. That's a massive example, what we're talking about here, because like entertainment is one thing where the tax office says, well, look, that's entertainment, that's all fun, that's private, really. Even though the entertainment might occur in the context of you running a business, it's still not largely deductible. So, but that doesn't mean that someone's going to suddenly change the way they feel about entertaining clients, thinking that it's a necessary part of trying to gain work and that sort of thing. So the right way to be thinking about it would be, well, is this entertainment something that's connected with your business? It is. Get into the habit of keeping all of the records, perhaps. Yeah. Now it might be that there's an out down the back end because there's a specific exclusion, but it's better to be training your brain to be making those decisions all the time and thinking about it, because if you're doing that on a daily basis, then that's when you start to just be thinking about your artistic activities more through the lens of professional business running, rather than just like, I love being on this job, I'm so happy I'm working on this film, and just not thinking of any of the professional side of anything, because if you're doing that sort of work and running around town, if you're not thinking about all of the sort of like business expenses, well, are you running around town in a car? Why is the car not under a logbook? Have you just gone and filled the car up? Well, why aren't you collecting the fuel receipt? Have you caught public transport to get to that position? Why aren't you recording something about the public transport cost? Even if it's something on, it's all sort of tap and go now, but like once upon a time it'd be on sort of like go-karts and things, but it's like, but like you can actually track all of that. If you want to spend the time and attention, you can find out exactly how all of these things are adding up. Back when I was drumming, I would do this like for anything that we did with the band, because we would be constantly going into the valley and watching shows midweek. We would drive in, I would sometimes park the car, there'd be, parking costs, there'd be, maybe cash of $5 on the door to get into the zoo, that sort of stuff. And it's not like that I was going to be like harassing the people at the door, can I have a receipt for that $5 cover charge? I'll probably get shown the stairs and go back out. But the OCD part of me is just like, but I'm thinking about it, and this is one of those little instances where I can't grab the receipt, but I'm going to write one of the notes in my own sort of like diarised entries to just say, hey, there was $5 cover charge to get into this particular show, because it's professional development. And I love it. I love listening to it, and there's definitely a personal element in there, but let's face facts. The reason I'm there is like because I'm a drummer, and we're trying to watch other bands, get hooked up with other bands, try to promote shows, learn the craft of other bands that have, like that's why you're there. And so, you're always sort of thinking in those terms, or should be training your brain to think in those terms, because if you're thinking about it all the time, that's when you'll just, Matt said collect. Matt said collect the documentation. Whatever way's going to work. Whatever's going to work.
Matt said collect the
Matt
docs.
said collect, yes. Merch shirts.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that I definitely struggle with, is just collect the receipts for everything.
We also do some very strange.
We do some strange, but even the parking, I was like, oh my god, I should have been collecting a receipt from parking this whole time. So silly of me, girly.
And The thing is that because it's so intertwined with what you love doing, like in a personal way, because that personal life is blended so much with your professional pursuit, it's why it's so important to sort of get in the habits and just think as broadly as you can. Anytime you jump in the car or go somewhere or spend money anywhere, the question that should be just forefront is like, can I connect this to my business in any way that I can possibly connect it? Because it doesn't need to even be 100% connected. So mobile phone, home internet use of a computer. There are many things where a purchase in your life or a cost has got some sort of business component. It might not be 100%, but there is a component there. And really, the ATO, they can't come at you and just go, oh, mobile phone, everyone's got a mobile phone. It's sort of, there's personal use there. They can't knock out a part claim of your mobile phone just because there's personal use. It's just that it's incumbent on you to be able to demonstrate to them, if you're going to claim some of that phone and you're going to set the business use at being 50%, can you demonstrate how you arrived at 50%? Is there a log of the use? Or, it's just substantiation. And if you just get into good habits, you don't think about it. I mean, I still, again, I'm tactile. I've already come clean on that. But like logbooks is another one of those things. Like I don't use apps. I still love the manual logbook in the car. It sits there. It's in the side pocket. It's there with its pen. It never leaves the car. And that car is used for business and private purposes. But I can tell you that if I ever jump in that vehicle for something business, it is just instinctive that I pick the logbook up and write down the beginnings of the entry. If it's personal, it just doesn't enter my mind. It is just habit. I don't think about it. And when I come back to the garage and I put that thing back in the garage and turn off the ignition, if it's been something business related, I get the logbook and I finish the logbook entry. There is never an unfinished entry in there. But it doesn't bother me. People just, oh God, keeping a logbook is just such a pain in the neck. It's just like, oh. My question to you is like, have you ever actually kept one for 3 months or more? See, I don't even keep one for 3 months. It probably comes as no surprise to you or your listeners by this stage. I bet he's going to say he keeps his logbook all year round, every year. And the answer is yes, listeners, I do. So I've always got an accurate reading of exactly how much business use that car goes through each year. And it varies. So I don't like setting a percentage or just thinking, oh, maybe because it was 30% last year, it'll be 30% this year. But what if it's not? What if suddenly there's a whole bunch of different usage that comes up that I didn't anticipate? If I'm just keeping it all year round, then it just gets captured every time. And as I said, because it's sort of inbuilt and I don't really think of it as being a chore, then it just gets done. It just is what it is.
I tried the apps and I failed. And as soon as I switched to a physical logbook, so much better for my brain. I get in the car and I'm like, is this a business or a pleasure? Like, it is business, great. And I get out my little logbook and I put it in there. Like, it's changed. I actually do it now.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I hope you're not just humouring me.
No, truly.
It's music to my ears.
I could not do it with an app. I don't know why. I think I am also more tactile. I keep a proper diary, and then have to re-digitize my diary so that I've got it on the go. But I need it written down first. For my brain, it works better that way. But yeah, switching from trying to do it through an app and doing the logbook through that to actually writing it down made it so much better for me. I start the car, I let it warm up, I write my logbook, off I go.
And one of the funny things that we've seen with the advent of those particular apps is that more often than not, if we know now to be fully warning clients about this ahead of time, but those apps are notorious for not even being compliant. So when you go through the Tax Act and find there's a specific provision in the tax law that talks about substantiation of a logbook for it to be valid, and it's pretty onerous. So those paper printed logbooks are in that format. So every time you keep one, every business trip that's there has got to be a date entry, like a reason, like where you're going and a reason why you're going. Both of those things. Yeah. An opening odometer reading, a closing odometer reading. And, you know, if those two readings indicate that it's a 56 kilometre trip, somewhere there's a column that says 56. Like, it's adding all of these things up. Full disclosure. But so many of those apps will just get people to flick, is this a personal trip or is it business? And it just says business. And you get and that's it. They don't ask them to do any of the extra recording. So, and the ATO, despite, you know, these warnings, these apps still do it. So it should be sort of something mandatory that if a user has not put in some sort of physical description of place and reason, then it should sort of just tell them, hey, like that's not compliant, and not allow it. But we've lost count of the number of times we've just seen these reports where they've gone off for like 3 months. It's like, Matt, here's the logbook, and all it says is business. So it's not good enough. Like, it's actually not compliant. You may as well have not spent any time doing it at all. It's not gonna wash. So all of the time and attention to keeping all of the receipts and everything, it sort of just, it's like running the 110 metre hurdles and sort of falling over at the first one, really.
And then realising you didn't actually like register, and so it doesn't count yet.
That's right. And we've had to say that to clients, like it's not, you know, but anyway, I think it's the fault of those apps that, you know,
100%.
Publish yourself as being compliant, whereas actually it's not. So just there's a mental note for anyone using those apps, you know, reason and places, or the data, those descriptors are really, really important.
That is a good note. I use Driver's Note. I don't know if you've come across it.
Yeah.
But in terms of my work, I can categorize what job it is. So like whether it's for my day job, and then there's a note section where I type in, I drove between this client's house and this client's house, because that's not covered, but any driving within it is. But I can absolutely make extra notes in there, so it's good to know that is important just as much as everything else. Because I can't do it. I've tried for years to do a physical logbook, and I get 1 week in, and then I'm just like...
It helps that my dad did a logbook. Like, my dad was a freelancer. Yeah. I watched, like, I was sitting in the back seat of the car while he flips out his logbook, and I watch him write it down. I was like, oh, that looks like fun. And so now it's just like, I think it might help.
But I love a physical anything.
Yeah.
But not a logbook. And I don't know what it is. I think it's because I just don't like driving. I think that comes down to a lot of it too. So I get in the car and I'm like, just get it done.
It's a necessity. It's not a pleasure.
Get it out.
So there's possibly some deeper issues going on there.
But I think that's really important. And I just want to come back to the fact that we are calling ourselves a business, because we have to register for an ABN for a lot of the things that we do. When we send an invoice for contract work, they're always like, and the ABN. And I think a lot of people, I know myself included, did it in my early 20s because I was told to, and had no understanding of why or what I was signing up to. So I think that also is important while we are talking about jumping into this wild, amazing thing. It is still necessary to be very on top of business attributes, because that is what this is.
Absolutely. And you're right, the ABN, it's like the tax file number for business people. And
that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. You know, everyone gets a tax file number, you know, when they start getting their first job, 15, 16 sort of thing. And the ABN is just that number that you need if you're going to be saying to the world, I'm a freelancer. Yeah. I'm out there, I'm a contractor. And I mean, the same thing from the employer's perspective as well. I mean, when we advise employers taking on contractors, we say to them, because they can come back to us saying, oh, trying to collect the ABN and paperwork from these people is really, really, it's like herding cats. And I'm like, look, it might be, but the best thing you can do is just tell them they're not getting paid until they furnish one. They'll get the ABN pretty quickly when the pay is being withheld, and you've just got to be really disciplined. Just simply do not pay them until the records are there, because they need the ABN. And from the employer perspective, if they start paying people, that should have ABNs and they haven't got them, the employers actually, they're the ones that risk having obligations where they should be withholding half of your payment in tax. And it's a really tedious withholding program for that type of example. So employers do not want to be doing that. And I'm sure any contractor does not want to see half of their contract fee taken in tax. If we're going, it's good maybe that some tax is being put aside on your behalf, but
you're making more work for everybody.
That's right. Let's just concentrate on being better disciplined ourselves to put the tax aside ourselves. So an ABN is not difficult to get. There's just some legal, I guess, constructs that if you're going to apply for one, you are ticking off on these I guess these statements to say yes, you are actually entitled to have one of these things. But they're not hard to get. It's just really just personal details and tell them what sort of industry you're in, and then they'll give you one. So the ABN is really like your first step, and then just getting your invoicing correct.
I didn't put my ABN on my invoice the first few, and I had somebody bounce back and they're like, hey babe, you just need to chuck your ABN on the invoice. I'm like, oh, okay, no worries, sure.
Yeah, and that's fine. So now and it just goes into the template and it's forever fixed.
Yeah.
And the real next step after that, there are some bits and pieces that obviously need to be on the invoices, but it's all pretty intuitive stuff, like you're going to have a date, you're going to have who you are, you're going to have the customer's name, you're going to have your ABN displayed, some banking details, a bit of a description as to what the invoice, these are the basic things that just have to be there.
You have to write if you're registered for GST, is that correct?
So the thing with the GST, and this is where the confusion can come in. So if you're an ABN holder and you're not registered for GST, then there's no mention whatsoever. You don't charge GST to people, you don't call your invoice a tax invoice. That's a big signifier that you're sort of dealing with someone who's GST registered. So if you just make your template a plain invoice and just charge your fee, you'll be fine. A lot of people who are not GST registered do like to put a bit of a statement near the ABN, like say in brackets, just like not GST registered, just so they stop people kind of harassing them about it. Oh, are you registered for GST? Oh, you didn't put GST on the invoice. Because I'm not registered is why I didn't do that. So I think it's a good little tip to just go, maybe just put not GST registered, so it's super clear to the employer that you're an unregistered freelancer for the GST tax.
And for the audience, who needs to be registered?
Yeah, so as soon as your gross income from the business, before any expenses are taken into account, when you're floating around a threshold of 75,000 per annum, it's potential GST registration territory. So, but the technical way that threshold works is a lot of people think of the 75,000 being confined to a financial year, but it doesn't technically work that way. It's asking a person to constantly monitor their income earnings month by month. And if you get to a point where you're looking at your current month and going back over the previous 11 months that have transpired, and you can look at that level and you're reaching or getting close to that 75, or you've breached it, then what the test says is you should be getting registered for GST then within 21 days of becoming aware of that fact. Except in the case of taking your current month turnover and doing your best projection over the next 11, if you don't reasonably believe that you're going to be over, or continue to be earning over 75,000 in a forward-looking capacity, then you're not under a technical requirement to register yet, but you need to keep doing this review every single month. So what that's designed to do is say to people, well, if you've been carrying on for the last 11 months and now you look at everything and say, oh my God, I'm up at 75, I better get registered. And then you do register, but then maybe the business falls off a cliff. You end up being registered in the ensuing 12-month period when you don't really need to be. And with 2020 hindsight, you should have actually been registered 12 months ago to be registered over this previous period of time. So the way this test sort of works is trying to make you look constantly backward and forward and giving you some flexibility so that they don't want that sort of an outcome either. Yeah. And so they're trying to just say to people, when you are pretty confident that that business is at a 75,000 sort of threshold, we want you to be registered. And so in our experience, if a taxpayer lodges a tax return for a year where their gross income has been over 75,000 and the person is not registered for GST, it doesn't necessarily ring alarm bells at the ATO to just be, we're not fielding calls from them about that sort of thing. If a taxpayer then lodges the next year's tax return and it's still over 75 again, you would then expect the ATO to start actually matching data that this business seems to be now actually consistently at 75 and there's still no actual registration. So the longer that time frame might go on,
they want their money.
They do. They and the 75,000 is a pretty low threshold in the grand scheme of things, so it can catch people out. However, we all know that the freelance space is up and down. Yep. People can get commissions. They can win prizes. They might have won a 50,000 grant one year or a prize that's not expected in the next year. So that it's very common for us to see clients where they'll tip over 75 in one year, but that's not meaning that they expect to be there in the following year. And we always say to clients, well, don't freak out if you've gone over 75. The question is what's everything looking like in the future? The answer that comes back almost 100% of the time is like, I have no idea. And it's like, okay, well, that's probably working in our favour at the moment. Let's not register just yet if we have no idea. That there is even a bit of a signifier that, we don't know, right? So it's got to be sort of consistently there. But if we're staring down the barrel of a second year where things are there, those conversations with the clients, like, look, we've got to be a bit serious about this, because if they do pick it up and start asking questions, they're going to trawl through the records to find where was the point in time at which the taxpayer should have reasonably believed that they were over 75 and should have registered within 21 days of that date. And in which case, they've got the ability to then come back, if they were going to do this, to then just say, you owe us GST on all the money that you've collected from this point forward. Even though you didn't charge it to anybody or collect it, we're still going to make you take 10% from you for it. No one wants that. No. Nope. So it's just do the right thing, but there is flexibility with that. Do you love how there's such a long answer? When do people get registered? I'll talk to you about that for half an hour.
I think it's good, because I think this is why tax can be such a confusing subject for single, sole tradery, performing arts, creative people, because it is kind of this like two-branch answer for everything.
There's
right?
different rules.
There's different rules for different people. There's different rules for different income streams. And I think that this is why it's the most asked for topic, because we're just like, I don't know.
What are the rules? What are the rules?
I mean, look, my tax became simpler when I moved from a performer to a photographer, because photography just seems to be more accepted. Like, people know what they can claim, people know like how the business works, Whereas when I was a performer, I was doing so many different styles of jobs, types of jobs. I was like, picking up a random princess party here and doing this over here, and you do the hustle so that you can get the money in the bank. But it means that everything was just chaos. A mess and chaos. Yeah.
And now we're in a world where
influencing
and foreign income streams, and you're trying to also set up for a future because who knows what's going to happen. So shares and investments and all of those kinds of things complicate it further and further and further and further. So I think this is excellent. But yes,
What it boils down to really is like find the right accountant.
I think that
Trust your accountant.
find somebody that works for you. And it's the same advice that we would give if we were talking about finding an agent or finding a manager, is find the person that works well with you.
Well, this also was how we found Matt, because we were like, we want to find the right person to come in and talk about the creative sphere of this.
Yeah.
And like, you are so deeply ingrained in that. And not only do you do accounting, you guys do like pro bono work for like speeches. What am I saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
do
do talks on this and
this very sort of thing.
Yeah.
Just in different organisations that are running those professional development programs. So, I mean, if you, and that's a good way of being able to access some of it as well, you know. So, you know, just try to be tapped into those particular arts-focused organisations, because they all run professional development type topics, you know, and we do get asked. The tax and finance stuff is usually linked in there somewhere, because it's just practical. It affects everybody, you know. No one wants to go to jail on this stuff. They, you know, the ATO are there, so you can't really escape it. Actually, it's quite depressing. Yeah,
it is.
If you can't beat them, join them, as they say.
Exactly. So if we have to like summarize the points that we've made so far, it's do your paperwork, log everything, start getting into a routine
of doing it daily.
It daily, of whether it's online or in your folders.
It's not a school assessment. It doesn't need to be last minute.
No,
No.
You might get a great. No, you. That this is it's an important, and tax is something that we need to think about every day, and that I think is a big takeaway, because a lot of us, myself included, will think about it once a year.
Yep.
You are a business. You are not just an employee anymore. Mm-hmm. This is your business. You need to be thinking about it as a business.
Mm-hmm. And if we want to know for $75,000, we have to register for DGST. That number seems huge and small at the same time. Hello, Kristen here, interrupting today's episode because we ended up talking to Matt for over 2 hours, and much like, well, Wicked, I guess, which seems to be the theme of today's episode, we have split this one into 2 parts, and this is the end of part 1. You can have early access to part 2 via the Patreon, so if you would like to listen before everybody else does, you can find it there. Otherwise, we will be releasing part 2 in 2 weeks' time. In the meantime, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at takenotes.pod, or you can email us at hello@takenotespod.com. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks for listening.